the World Justice Project. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy. Any of these names sound familiar? Who are involved in these USAID program, rule of law programs to control the courts? Any of these sound familiar? They're the most famous fucking Supreme Court judges in the country. And they're all in on it. And who's with them? Who's tied up in a knot with the Supreme Court justices who are doing these CIA rule of law programs? Again, that is John Roberts with Norm Eisen, Stephen Breyer from the Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg from the Supreme Court, Anthony Kennedy from the Supreme Court. And who's with them? Bill Clinton's Secretary of State, the head of the State Department, Madeleine Albright. James Baker, Secretary of State, and the president of the AFL-CIO? I'm sorry, what? Come again? The rule of law program, we're going to get to this with this World Justice Project. I'm sorry. One of these things is not like the other. The chairman of British Petroleum, the biggest oil company in London, what are you doing here on the board of the rule of law programs to control foreign countries' entire prosecutors, judges, and court systems? What are you doing with 4 members of the Supreme Court? The chairman of the biggest oil conglomerate in London, together with the head of the AFL-CIO, the biggest union group, as we've gone over in many of these streams, the CIA, AFL-CIO, as well as the Supreme Court from Pakistan, back to Pakistan, the International Trade Union Confederation, another one of these, union groups. I'm sorry, what the fuck do you know about the law? You're representing a trade union. You're not even... You see what I'm saying? We're gonna get to this. Okay. But that comes a little bit later in the story. The last 20 years have seen a great resurgence, this is in 2009, of thought and talk about rule of law and shaping and maintaining free societies, blob-controlled societies. I don't recall the phrase being used when I was a student in law school, but now it is dominant in a fundamental core concept. On the American side of the Atlantic, not least among those commentators taking up advocacy of the rule of law, are several justices of the Supreme Court promoting these programs. As we saw, Justice Anthony Kennedy and Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, who, as we saw, were on the board of the World Justice Project that we're going to get to. Okay. More recently, the American Bar Association convened a World Justice Project in Vienna in 2008 to examine and promote the rule of law. So the American Bar Association convened a World Justice Project. Okay, so that is what we just saw right here, and we're going to get to and more because I want to dig into this institution. World Justice Project honorary chairs: Bill Clinton, Secretary of State; Ronald Reagan's Secretary of State; a senator from the Parliament of France; the Prime Minister of Italy; the President of the International Trade Union Confederation; EU Commissioner; another Supreme Court Justice; Supreme Court of Japan; Woodrow Wilson Center, International Center. We're back to Woodrow Wilson. Supreme Court of Pakistan; Chairman of British Petroleum, and the head of the AFL-CIO. Isn't that incredible? The head of the AFL-CIO influencing the entire architecture of the lawmaking process in countries around the world. Man, AFL-CIO intrigues never stop. Like, think about that. What the fuck is he doing here with sitting heads of state, with prime ministers and Supreme Court justices? I'm telling you, it's going to be connected to the riots and them not prosecuting rioters when they do color revolution stuff, but throwing the hammer at their political enemies. So they convened a World Justice Project. So let's now go to the World Justice Project. And this now, it's gonna be a little bit more interactive. I want to watch some videos that I've never seen before. I just ran a simple search, and I was highly intrigued by what I found. Let's see the 15th anniversary from 2 months ago. So again, it was started in 2008. Sherrilyn Ifill? No fucking way. Oh my God, no way. She's like the black racial social cleavage point side of the lawfare apparatus. Sherrilyn Ifill was general counsel, I believe, for the NAACP. She was involved in setting up the 14th Amendment Center at Howard University to disqualify Donald Trump from running for president. She was involved in that whole Transition Integrity Project initiative. She works closely with Norm Eisen and those people to sort of, advance things like the Ku Klux Klan Act that Trump was prosecuted under. Holy fuck, they're starting with Sherrilyn Ifill? That's insane. So Sherrilyn Ifill is directly with the USAID network. USAID is funding ABA. Let's keep going. Wow.
World Justice Project on 15 years of extraordinary service. The World Justice Project is so important because it unites us globally in undergirding one of the most important pillars of any democracy, the rule of law.
It unites us globally, a global network. Sherrilyn, you said that under the rule of law, the current president of the United States was not allowed to run for president of the United States. Like 100 million people voted for him. So when you say you have a worldwide network to carry this out, who the fuck is we?
The rule of law touches people's lives in many ways. You make that visible.
Very compelling, dude. Hey, camera's over here. This guy is like staring off in the middle distance, reciting some teleprompter that's like 30 yards away. What the fuck is this? Like, go back to this guy.
People's lives in many ways.
Of any democracy.
How is this your take? You know you can re-record the video, bro.
The rule of law touches people's lives in many ways.
Dude, you sold me on it. I'm convinced. Shit, I'll give up my Constitution. Yeah, you're right. I guess the First Amendment of the Constitution is illegal under the Constitution. And, my president should be in jail and shouldn't have been allowed to run. Yeah, just take everything. Take my house, take my wife. You convinced me, dude. This is an Oscar-worthy performance right here.
You make that visible and measurable, highlighting trends and working with everyone from governments to grassroots organizations developing.
I couldn't even focus on what this guy is saying because this is the most cartoon, robotic drone that you roll out and shove in front of a camera in order to bore people to tears so they never see the shit you're doing. This is like when they use the phrase information integrity instead of just saying censorship. It's like, well, you fall asleep halfway through the phrase. You fall asleep halfway through the guy. I love how they say they work with these grassroots organizations. You mean AstroTurf organizations. They're paid by USAID. They're not grassroots. They're sponsored by the government. Say that again.
Everyone from governments to grassroots organizations developing new solutions. Congratulations, World Justice Project, on 15 years of great work.
But
imagine sending that as like a happy birthday. You're dating a girl. Happy birthday, baby. I love you. I'm so happy for our time together. You're the woman of my dreams. But I read it like this. Camera's right here. Let me see if I can, I have my glasses on. Happy birthday, baby. I am so grateful for our time together. You are the girl of my dreams. This is crazy. How is this your take? Bro, this is not like a live recording. And it's not like, dude, memorize that shit if you're going to do that. Or riff a little bit. See, this is the thing. When people are this inauthentic, you can't trust a fucking word they say about anything, okay? This is why you can kind of trust Trump. Even if he fudges a little bit here and there, or, you know, he's not necessarily, if he doesn't follow through on a particular thing, you still, in a general sense, you're like, he's being real with me. He's being present. It's not scripted. It's from the heart. It's from the soul. I know he's not concealing things. Because you can conceal things when you have to read off of the screen every single word, because what that says is you don't have the confidence to be able to authentically and spontaneously talk about it, because you're afraid you might fuck up a word, and so you need every single word right in order to convey the message, because you don't really believe or understand the message. So to remove all possibility of not saying it exactly the way you were coached to or your sponsors want the message delivered, you've just cut and pasted. I mean, this was like the scandal with the whole Big Soda sponsorship thing. Like, everyone used the same phrase. They just like read off the, you know, the talking points, so to speak. And like, that's what they're doing to AstroTurf, this fucking CIA control over the court system project, this global network to control the entire rule of law in every country on earth, including here.
On 15 years of great work,
but faithfully including the art.
Afghanistan National Institute of Music. The final boss. I'm telling you, that was the one job I would have done in DC. I didn't want to be head of the CIA, Secretary of State, Secretary of DHS, Administrator of USAID. No, I wanted to be Secretary of Music. And this guy fucking took my job in Afghanistan. A little curious, though, if you don't mind my asking. How does the Afghanistan National Institute of Music director get this role alongside two secretaries of state, the former Prime Minister of Italy, the former the Supreme Court of Pakistan, the Supreme Court of Japan, the Secretary of Education, President of Bulgaria, Chairman of British Petroleum, and the AFL-CIO? Well, you know the answer. We've talked about this, right? Arts and culture. And in fact, there's a really interesting thing that we'll see here on artists and the rule of law, because they want to, quote, protect free expression for the artists so that they can sing songs about, you know, overthrowing the government and things like this, like they did in Bangladesh when IRI sponsored the Bangladeshi rappers. When Pussy Riot, who is sponsored by USAID and housed by the National Endowment for Democracy, when they were writing the revolution songs to overthrow the government of Russia, they want their USAID funds, their artist expression, just like they, you know, were paying the graffiti artists to spray paint the Berlin Wall with pro-US messages, and they did the same thing in Hong Kong. That's why you have the musicians in these CIA rule of law networks, because they want the judges to let them go for crimes. They want now listen, if it was just that, I would support it, because I actually do believe that, you know, if you're not promoting violence, then I'm a free speech maximalist on these things. But the fact is, they're doing it for completely cynical purposes. And they're promoting censorship on the other side of it. They're saying it's not rule of law unless you have counter disinformation programs. So they don't believe a fucking word of it. But just to show you how deeply entrenched this is, let's keep going.
Us and freedom of artistic expression in new activities.
And there it is. He just literally, once again, I was like, hey, I bet it's probably because they want to protect expression for these dissidents. This is so funny. And remember, as we played many times, Miles Copeland the manager for Sting and REM, was summoned to the Pentagon 3 times to organize music events in Afghanistan and in Iraq, getting the artists to all echo blob propaganda.
To highlight the vital truth that cultural rights are human rights. Thank you very much for your
There's another guy who's like, this guy's rubbernecking. This guy is looking at the screen side to side like a friggin' supermodel just walked by. Look at this.
Thank you very much for your unwavering commitment and leadership in fostering a more just and equitable world.
Look how fake this is. It's so friggin' fake. None of them can give a heartfelt message. Every single one of them has to read off of the screen for a 20-second congratulations. I mean, this is the 15th anniversary. You're just reading an anniversary message. You know, when I call my mom and dad to wish them happy anniversary, I don't need to read off a fucking teleprompter for 20 seconds on the voicemail. If you believed in what this institution did, and you supported it, and loved and cherished it, you would say it from the chest. You wouldn't have to go like this, like you're reading some PR statement from a crisis PR manager when you get in trouble for, you know, getting Me Too'd or something. Yes, my publicist told me to read this message.
Happy 15th anniversary, WJP. When it comes to protect the rule of law with data, networks, capacity building, you are one of the most important.
Networks and capacity building. So the primary point of World Justice Program is to run money into the networks. That's what capacity building means. Building up their capacity, their financial capacity. It means giving them money. And then giving them the resources. Great job running money into the networks around judges, prosecutors, and courts. To make them independent? They were independent before you. You've permanently despoiled their independence by running money into their networks. You fucking assholes.
Important organizations in the world. So you inspire us, you help us to do a better work in the field.
Thank you to everyone involved at the World Justice Project Rule of Law Index.
Look at those eyes. What? Look at. Okay, we gotta rewind this a second. Look at the eyes. Look at how much that goes back and forth when she reads side to side off the screen. Guys, just make the font smaller and compressed so that when you're reading off of it, you can fake a little bit so your eyes only shift like this much. When I can't even roll my eyes in the back of my head as much as they roll them laterally just to read a happy anniversary statement. Do any of them actually know what this fucking group does? Are you guys even there? Are you a hollow shell? Are you rolled out of a sarcophagus like fucking Nosferatu? You know, when the sun goes down to read the statement out? Were you even awake for the past 15 years while this institution was doing what it does? How come none of you can speak about it off the cuff?
Thank you to everyone involved at the World Justice Project Rule of Law Index.
She like had to turn her neck almost. Thank you for everybody at the Rule of Law program who page turned. You know, it's like you're a piano accompanist, and you need to like turn the page. You know, when you're coming up on the end of the page when you're reading the notes, and you're like, okay, ooh.
For creating and maintaining an invaluable tool for policymakers, for human rights advocates, and for businesses.
Oh, she came alive with businesses. You guys see that? Wow. The vampire had seen the sunlight before that, but then Suddenly, she smelled fresh blood when the word businesses came up. Policymakers. Why the fuck do they need to consult the World Justice Project as an independent judiciary to determine their own country's policies? They're not independent policies if they're working closely with a USAID CIA front group.
Policymakers, for human rights advocates, and for businesses.
So you're saying you're influencing the policies. This is outrageous. They're supposed to be independent.
Thanks to you, we know what the problems are at the country.
Open government partnership. Wait, isn't that Obama's thing? Hold on a second. Open government partnership, and it works with something called the Open Government Hub out of the State Department. Obama was working through the Open Government Partnership, along with Norm Eisen. So Norm Eisen is tied into this World Justice Program, as is Barack Obama. The Obama Foundation. Last week, Barack Obama sat down with young leaders from around the world for the Open Government Partnership Summit, from Kyrgyzstan to Argentina. Norm Eisen, so proud I helped develop the idea for the Open Government Partnership. Norm Eisen developed the idea for the Open Government Partnership, which is just open society, but for governments. And the CEO of the Open Government Partnership is giving the happy anniversary to the World Justice Project, the same World Justice Project that has 4 Supreme Court justices on its board, as well as 2 secretaries of state, and this entire blob span from Italy to France to Japan to Ethiopia to Pakistan to the AFL-CIO to the chairman of British Petroleum. Holy fuck. Holy fuck. So this is Norm Eisen's global coordinating node for the rule of law programs. He said this was his idea.
Level and where the gaps are. OGP deeply values the World Justice Project for its deep dedication to making the world a more just place.
And you do that by capacity building and funding networks of judges and courts and prosecutors. Dominican Republic, Youth People, Minister of Justice in Argentina, General Counsel of Google? No! Have you no shame? Fuck you, Google. What? The General Counsel of Google?
It is impressive what you all have been able to accomplish in 15 years. You have really helped secure the rule of law around the world.
Without the rule of law, there's no.
Oh man, that's nasty. Judicial Reform Foundation. We're back to judicial reform, the USAID. International Development Law Organization. Yeah. Former president of the Supreme Court of Brazil and a World Justice Project board member. Supreme Court of Brazil. Well, there it is. This is, this is yet another way that they are talking to the judges and telling them what policies should be allowed and not allowed in the country. And then they go out and make rulings based on those policies that they're consulted with in the networks. They're flush with cash because of the State Department and USAID, these CIA back channels. That's incredible. All right, let's keep going. I have a ton more on this I want to get into. Euro Voices, I bet that this is going to get, this is, like, think about what just happened in Romania with the rule of law, the court nullifying the election, what just happened in France with the rule of law, arresting, imprisoning, and barring Marine Le Pen from the French election. What's happening with the rule of law with the EU Digital Services Act, the crackdown on free expression. We have much to do in our own backyard? Whoa, what does this mean?
We have much to do. a connection between the rule of law and communities of opportunity and of equity. While we have much to offer developing countries, we have much to do in our own backyard. We have work to do, you and I, and it's good and it's important work, and there's lots of it.
What do you mean in our own backyard? You mean like here in the United States? Like a USAID program that's supposed to be pointed outward? A State Department program that's supposed to be pointed outward? Is you're trying to boomerang back with judges here in the United States? The same judges who are making these atrocious decisions against the Trump admin? I want to know if Judge Boasberg is involved in this network and those other judges that have been a part of these decisions. The career connection. Oh, let's see. Wow. This is interesting. In March 2018, the World Justice Project was looking for a new executive director. Represent the World Justice Project in communications and relationships with all the octopus of constituencies and partners, including domestic and international supporters, funders, collaborators, scholars, organizations, stakeholders. Advance World Justice Project's 3 lines of business. Okay, so World Justice Project is a for-profit, I guess they said CEO, right? So it's a for-profit business, the World Justice Partnership? 3 lines of business? An NGO would not use that phrase. Let's check on that in a second. I love job descriptions. This is like because it tells you like what does the CEO do? Okay, so research and scholarship, which means like that just means justifying the policies that we want the judges and the courts to pass. The Rule of Law Index and engagement, strategic engagement, external engagement. That's always like the State Department. That's always like the government agency term for like working with outside groups. Stakeholder engagement, external engagement, strategic engagement, which includes strategic convenings, bringing together the network. Let's see, is it for profit? It's kind of fucked up. Hold on a second. 3 lines of business. It's a nonprofit. Why do they say 3 lines of business? Huh? As a presidential, so it was formed as an initiative of the American Bar Association. And then it became an independent nonprofit in 2009. So it's a spin out of the American Bar Association and now sits on its own. Criminal Justice Open Government is one of the indexes there. Oh, that's Norm Eisen's Open Government Project. It's about arresting government officials despite how politically toxic it is. Wow. Wow. Yeah, the forums, attendees including Bill Gates, competitions and prizes. I want to take, we got like a half hour left in the stream. I want to take one more music thing so I can go to the bathroom real quick. Oh, I bet they're in Romania. I bet World Justice Project's in Romania. I want to, public sector donors, the European Commission, Global Affairs Canada, USAID, the State Department, and the World Bank. Now, the World Bank comes into this. If you've not done so, I command you. What would, King Arthur and Monty Python, The Hunt for the Holy Grail, says to the peasants who are completely disrespecting him, I command you, as your king. I'm just kidding. You guys can do what you want. And you can revolt against me. You can completely disrespect my joke authority by not doing this. But if you wanna really sharpen your tools, sharpen your blade, hone it in the fires of Mordor, so that you can slay any beast, I highly, highly recommend you read the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It's not perfect. Okay, it's not perfect. It's a little bit dated because it's from a long time ago. But this book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, is really, really fantastic. Now, the guy is like a left-wing guy. You're not going to necessarily love his political viewpoints if you're a Trump supporter, but it is a in the field, on the ground account of how the World Bank and IMF are used to establish economic control over a country on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and the multinational corporations. And part of the way that control is established is by conditioning financial support from the World Bank, conditioning access to loans, conditioning hundreds of millions or sometimes billions of dollars, like Argentina has $15 billion worth of IMF debt, on changes to the rule of law. You want the money and you're refusing to do what the State Department says? Well, tough titties. You don't get your World Bank money. You don't get your IMF loan. It's basically like a USAID type function, the same way that Joe Biden threatened the Ukrainian government that they wouldn't get their $1 billion USAID loan unless they fired the prosecutor. Anyway, the World Bank is another one of the levers, financial levers, for forcing laws to go through. That's why the World Bank is all over the rule of law stuff. You condition the loans unless the government changes its laws. Independent laws, right? Independent judiciary. Except it's if you don't do it, your government will go bankrupt, and you are appointed by your government. Institutional donors: the American Bar Association, the Open Society Foundation. So it's a Soros org. So the World Justice Project is a Soros org. Soros, USAID, State Department, World Bank. Great. Private sector donors: Google, a bunch of law firms like Jones Day, Arnold Perkins Coie, the DNC law firm with a special FBI SCIF, national security clearances, the sort of DNC CIA law firm. Shell Global. Oh, that explains why British Petroleum is on the board. The big oil and gas companies, get the fuck out of here. Writing the laws just like they did in Ukraine. That is insane. Shell used to be Royal Dutch Shell. That is insane. Shell had a $10 billion deal with Naftagaz, while the IMF and World Bank were cranking the pressure on Ukraine to privatize Naftagaz, to sell it off to private stakeholders. Shell signed a $10 billion deal with them in the run-up to the 2014 Ukraine coup. It's like them and British Petroleum are the two biggest London-based oil and gas companies. So Shell is a donor, and on their board is the chairman of British Petroleum. God damn. God damn. There's like three